Hey everybody, what's up? So this is kind of a Halloween video. I'm obviously going to make more for this Halloween explosion thing. But for right now, this is just going to be a simple video. Because I wanted to talk to you guys about something. It's going to be a simple video about a not so simple topic. Because I think everybody into this topic has a certain opinion about this. And that is rock and roll. Now, you know me, I'm a big fan of this music. I always have been. And I'm not, I started out more into grunge and I got into, well, actually, that's a lie. I started out listening to a lot of oldies when I got into rock and roll. And I started out with grunge. And nowadays I'm kind of back to oldies, though, with a more punk twist. And yeah. So today I wanted to kind of talk about rock and roll, and specifically I wanted to talk about shock rock. And the reason why I wanted to talk about shock rock, I don't know if you guys know this about me or not, or if I ever said this or not, but I'm a big Alice Cooper fan. In fact, he is probably the main reason what got me into the more, not necessarily gloomy, but I like the more darker kind of horror aspect of rock and roll, which makes sense. I always liked B-movies and just weird stuff. So yeah. Well, I was watching an interview of Alice Cooper, and he said something that was interesting to me. So this woman asked him, do you think it's possible to shock people again? His answer was no. In fact, he said, shocking people is not relevant today because we see shocking things everywhere on the news, terrible things happening on the news, but it's getting to the point where even terrible things like mass shootings, for example, it's sad, but it doesn't really shock you anymore. You know what you mean? Like, you're kind of used to it now. So why would a music, what is about horror and monsters, be shocking? Kind of a similar thing, right? Well, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, is that true? I mean, I love Alice Cooper and all, but it's possible for me to disagree. Mostly because I believe rock and roll, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, and I have talked about this subject before. Rock and roll needs to see their parents again. I'm sorry. I think that's what it... Look. Rock and roll was built on the idea of... This is teen trash music. Teenage trash music. You know. This is teen juvenile delinquent music, man. You know. And I just feel like rock and roll has really lost that, so I've been trying to think, what is Alice Cooper talking about here? Well, I actually kind of understand where he's coming from in the sense, yes, it is true, a lot of rock and roll nowadays, you know, they don't really do the shock rock thing anymore, because, like Alice Cooper says, you know, you can turn on the news and see shocking things everywhere. Why would you want to be shocked at this point? And if your goal is to shock your parents, well, a bad thing about that is your parents were into that as teenagers. So what? Are you going to try to do the same thing? You know, it's not sort of a similar thing to punk, right? You can't just wear a mohawk and expect your parents to go, oh no, because they did that in the past. And that saddens me at the fact that really there's no, like, new ideas or anything to shock anymore. So is shocking dead? Well, yes and no. I know that's kind of a not clear answer here, but let me explain for a second. There's a reason why I said yes and no. For starters, I think you can still shock. It's just nowadays, to be shocking, you almost have to be anti-shock. You know what I mean? Like you have to be so normal, it's kind of coming off uncanny. That, I think, shocks people. But there's a second element to this I want to talk about. What if you can shock people almost the same way as Alex Cooper did back in the 70s? However, you shock people in a different sense. Let me give a little context to this. When Alice Cooper started scaring people back in the early 70s, you gotta remember where we were coming out from. We were coming out of an era of peace and love, man. You know, we were coming out of the era of the Beatles. And there's nothing wrong with that music, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the context here. We were coming out of like Jefferson Airplane and White Rabbit. We were, but here's the thing though. For the time, that was shocking. Yes, it was all about peace and love, but that was shocking for the time. But by the 70s, that stuff just got so marketed and rehash. What was once fun teenage trash like Jimi Hendrix playing psychedelic music just became yacht rock or crap like that, or sophisticated rock for adults. When Alice Cooper and a lot of these punk bands like the Ramones and stuff came out, they were scaring people because they were different. So maybe perhaps the only way to share people is with two things. Like I said, to be normal to the fact it is uncanny, or to be different. Tell me what you think in the comments. I think it's an interesting question, and I would like to hear your opinions by it.